To understand effective practice, it is useful to appreciate how the brain works. Everything we learn and remember, it's all about the brain. This is what I think students should know about the brain. The human brain is the most magnificent, the most complex structure in the known universe. We all have roughly the same number of brain cells, about 86 billion, but this does not make us smart. It only represents potential. What makes us smart is the connections or the pathways that form between the brain cells. 86 billion brain cells can generate 80 to 90 trillion connections. 1 cubic inch of the brain is more complex than the whole of the known universe. This is why humans have such an extraordinary capacity for intelligent behaviour, such as learning complex musical pieces. This is what learning is, new neural circuits being formed in the brain. Unfortunately, you don't get these connections for free. You have to work at it. You have to construct your brain. Students, you are neurological engineers, constructing new pathways in your brain. Consider examples for your students to examine how they use repetition to learn general skills. Many activities in daily life are automated through inordinate amounts of repetition. This might be a valuable exercise for students to reflect, discuss, and write on. For example, no one could tie their shoelaces the first time they tried. It takes several attempts to learn how to do this. Learning how to talk is another example. We practice by speaking on average 15,000 words per day to master this complex skill. There are no ready-formed circuits in the brain for reading. This too takes years of practice. And so it is for musical skill development. Nothing is as important as the quantity and the quality of repetition to condition the complex muscle movement required in music and in sport. To learn any skill, one try is never enough. Confidence, essential in musical performance, comes from the repetition of tasks to a consistently high standard. Get it right so many times that you don't need convincing that you can do it. Repetition creates automation. Consider this example of Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu. Performing Frédéric Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu requires approximately 19 notes per second, which in turn coordinates about 380 muscle movements per second. This must be learnt to such an extent that conscious attention to the notes is virtually no longer necessary, because at very fast tempi, learned automated responses occur faster than the performer can think about it. Have your students examine a piece they play in terms of notes per second. Many of the activities I recommend you do with students are incorporated in my student course, Developing Musical Skill. In summary to this point, Repetition is the fundamental principle in learning new skills, and for musical learning, nothing is so important. Automation frees up the brain to concentrate on other aspects of the music, such as expression. Memorization is what musicians do when they learn the muscle movements to play a particular piece. As Daniel Levitin says, there's nothing particularly special about this type of learning. If you repeat an action in a certain manner and for a sustained period of time, the brain will learn and the muscles obey. Virtuosic music making demands some of the most complicated motor patterns humans can acquire. There's really nothing, even in the world of sport, that compares to the sequence of coordinated muscle movements per second that virtuosic music demands. In a sense, musicians are the super athletes of the world. The virtuoso musician in full flight is a sight to behold. We know that repetition is essential to generate a new connection in the brain. The absolute number of repetitions needed to stabilise performance for any given skill varies among individuals and among tasks. But with further repetition, magic takes place. Myelin is the chemical of effortlessness. Myelin is an insulator. It coats the axon sheath of a neural circuit, speeding up the transmission of data, automating skills and making them seem easier to perform. Faster neurons lead to faster thought. There's only one way to build myelin on brain circuits: repetition. Students will probably know much of what you present about repetition, but reiteration and reminder is important. These concepts must be revisited on a regular basis. We all go back to basics when losing our way. Ask your students what problems might come with repetition. They will probably respond, mistakes and boredom. Mistakes. Repeat carefully. The learning brain does not distinguish between good and bad habits. Ask students if they've had that experience recently of learning a mistake. Did they find that it's jolly difficult to correct it afterward? Yes. So get it right as soon as possible. Many students say they find repetition boring. When constant repetition is boring, our boredom is telling us that our brains are not engaged. Practice requires 100% attention, unlike performance, where we allocate our attention in a different way. Students, if you're turning off during practice, stop and re-engage yourself. Repetition can lead to boredom and loss of attention. You've got to know how to repeat. Many people think that there is but a singular type of repetition, a drill we call blocked repetition. Blocked repetition means repeating something exactly the same way each time. Whilst it is useful for getting the new brain circuit started, for long-term and robust learning, it has a quick forgetting curve. It delivers a delusion of competence. You think you've got it today, but you've lost it tomorrow. There are better ways to repeat, as we shall see in the next unit.